Imagine being able to use Claude not only to connect to your n8n account, but even to give you every information that you can imagine, but also to create workflows just by using a prompt. And within this video, I would like to show you how you can do this. So let's take a look at this example, for instance, where I told it that I would like to give me a list of the currently published workflows within n8n, right? And it gave me this list right here. And if I jump into my n8n account, then you can see that these are now, I'm using a filter right here, so I'm only showing the published ones are exactly the names that are also being mentioned within Claude Code. But not only that, this flow right here, this was also created solely by Claude, right? And I would like to show you how you can do this. And there are a couple of requirements that we need to conduct. And if you want to dig into this further, then you can see that within the documentation of n8n, within the advanced AI section, there is this currently still in beta article, which is called Accessing n8n MCP Server. And this is what we're going to use. And if you take a look at the article, then you can see on the right-hand side the TOC, which looks more intimidating than it actually is. But this is actually a 2-minute process, and I would like to show you how we can do this. Now, the first thing is that you want to make n8n itself accessible from the outside, right? So that applications like Claude, for instance, are able to conduct certain kinds of operations and functions on your behalf, if you will. And the first thing that we need to do is to jump into n8n itself. And then you see in the bottom left corner, there are the settings, right? And what you need to do is to, first of all, jump into the instance level MCP section. And if I do this, then you can see that I have a couple of workflows that are being listed here. And these are now the flows that I explicitly told n8n to enable Claude to have access to, And you can see this in the description right here that it says, let MCP clients like Claude, Lovable, and other AI tools discover and execute your n8n workflows, right? Which also means that not only are they able to have reading access, but they can also execute the flows, right? So what you can do is that you basically prepare a couple of your workflows to be available from the outside for Claude, and then to enable this specific MCP connection to even execute these flows, right? And the way you can do this is fairly simple, because you have this big, beautiful red button, which is just called Enable Workflows. And if you click on this, then you have a selection of all the flows that are available to be accessed from the outside. And there are, as I've mentioned, 2 or 3 prerequisites that you need to adhere to. The first one is that the flow has to be published. And the next one is that it has to have a specific type of trigger. And this is, fairly common and simple to understand, because if I jump into these flows again, or any flow rather, then you can see that there are multiple types of triggers that we can use to start the flow basically. And if I jump into the n8n docs again, and I am within the Accessing n8n MCP Server doc again, then you have this section called Exposing Workflows to MCP Clients. And if I click on this, then there are basically 2 prerequisites that need to be fulfilled to make this accessible. So as I've mentioned, it first needs to be published, the flow itself needs to be published, and then it also has to contain one of the following trigger nodes. And the ones that are or will enable this flow to be accessed from outside is the webhook node, then the schedule trigger node, and then the chat and the form trigger node, right? And if you jump into a flow like so, then you can see that these are exactly the ones that are listed here. So we have on a schedule, we have the webhook, we have the form, and then down here we have the chat node, right? So this flow has to have any of these trigger nodes as its actual trigger. So if I renamed this to, let's say, test Claude, and then I was to publish it on the right-hand side and this button right here, then I'm just going to click publish and click publish again. And now those prerequisites are basically fulfilled. And if now I jump back into the selection of the flows that I can choose from, and I open this up, then now you can see if I look for test, then now you can see that I also have access to this test Claude flow right here, right? All right, there's one more step that we need to take care of before we can actually do this, which is obviously connecting n8n itself to Claude, right? And the way you do this is just by clicking on the Connected Clients tab right here, and then you can see which clients are connected, which clients have access to your MCP or via MCP to your n8n instance. And the way you connect this is that you would need to have your connection details. Then this will give you access not only to the server URL, but also to the access token. And there you also have the server URL, then you have your access token and also the configuration JSON that you can paste into the according client. All right, next we're going to jump into Claude itself. And now I'm going to go into the settings. So I'll go to my account, and then I'm going to jump onto settings, and then I'm going to jump into the connectors right here. And here you can already see that I already added n8n instance, right? And the next thing is that I'm going to click on this button right here, which is called Add Custom Connector. And as soon as this is opening, you can see that, first of all, this is also still in beta, right? But it's worth trying out. And then the next thing is that you would just give it a name, right? So just like I did in an instance, and then let's just call it instance 2. And here you can already see that we need the remote MCP server URL. And this is exactly the one that we have just copied from the connection details within n8n. So jumping back into n8n, clicking on the connection details, and now I'm going to copy the server URL into my clipboard, jumping back into Claude, and I'm just going to paste it right here, and then I'll just say add. And as soon as that is done, it will appear here in the custom connectors section, just as I've had just done with the n8n instance. And if you go on to the configuration button right here, then you can see which kind of tools you, or Claude rather, now has access to, right? And here you can see that there are a couple of read-only tools. And if you open this up, then you can see exactly what they are capable of and what type of approval you would like to grant them, right? So if you want to always allow this, or if you want to, you're asking for approval every time it wants to execute this specific action, or if you want to generally block this, right? And depending on your specific use case, this can be obviously different. Now, within the write and delete tools section, there's actually now a very interesting permission that it has, which is to create a workflow from code. So this is something that it is now actually able to do, right? So what I'm going to do is to create a new chat right here, and then I'm going to paste in the prompt that I have prepared. And this is the prompt that I prepared. So it just says create an n8n workflow called 031, and then with a demo at the end that runs every morning at 8 a.m., uses the Anthropic node, not the AI agent, to generate a short motivational daily briefing and sends it via Gmail, right? And then a couple of other instructions, and I'm getting quite specific here. So this is the prompt, and let's see what it does. So I'm just going to click send, and let's see. And while it is actually working, you can basically follow its thoughts, right? So it's, as you can see, it is loading the tools, then it is getting node definitions, and then it is basically walking down that specific tasks, right, list that it has conducted for itself. And then you can basically follow along that thought process, right? So I can see the Anthropic node here is LangChain chat model, but I need the Anthropic text messages node, right? So it's getting really specific in that regard. Now it's telling me, or rather thinking, I have everything I need. Now let me build and validate the workflow tool, right? Now it has been validated. There are 3 nodes, no errors, and then it's creating the workflow. All right, it ran now into a couple of errors. I had to tell it to continue, and then it tried to bug fix all the problems itself. However, if I jump back into n8n, then you can see actually within the settings of instance level MCP that this is now the flow that it has created, right? And it obviously also has access to it. That's why it's listed here. And if I jump into this flow right now, then you can see that it actually did adhere to exactly the instructions that I told it, right? So every day at 8 a.m. And this is now completely generated by Claude itself, right? So I didn't do anything. I didn't rename the nodes. I didn't set up the settings, right? So within the trigger intervals, you can see that it is set to days every day and at 8 a.m. And then looking into the next node, it also adhered to the specific node that I told it to, right? So it's the Anthropic AI node, right? And then to message a text. And if I jump into this, then you can also see that, first of all, it is connected to my credentials. These were set up beforehand. And then there is a model. So I would need to check whether this is valid, right? Because it's now using the model by ID. I'm kind of hesitant to believe that it knows the exact ID of the model, right? But at the end of the day, this is something that you could change. And then there's the prompt, right? So if I open up the prompt, then you can see today is, and then it uses an expression correctly, right? It even formats this into a human readable format, right? So that it's easier to read for the agent actually, and then, or for the model in this case. And then please write a short daily briefing with, and then all the instructions that I told it to adhere to on a roughly basis, right? And if I close this, then everything else also looks legit. And then send the daily briefings email is also a note that it created itself. And then it gave this nice little subject line. The recipient email is not populated. This is something that we need to take care of ourselves, or obviously we need to tell it that. And then we have the text, right? We have the text variable from the previous node. Now, obviously, we would need to test this, and this is a very simple flow, but here you can already see the potential, right? And everything that I just showed you is still in beta, right? And this is also something that they are making public, right? That this is still in beta status, but you can see where this is going to lead us, right? That sooner or later, you will be able to create flows, n8n flows directly, and then they can even be executed, right? Just from an MCP client like Claude itself, and this is something very, very powerful happening right now. All right, that's already it for today. I highly appreciate your attention. Hope to see you next time, and see ya. Bye.